When you say former colleague, it sounds so terrible. All right. All right, thank you all. I like that it's still going. I like that. All right, everyone. Thank you all for coming. I know Travis Goodspeed is a much better talker than I am, or a much better presenter. No. He definitely earns it. However, but I'm here to give kind of the other side of car talk. If you guys have, and this is kind of an introduction, but kind of a different side of that introduction. The talk this morning, especially at 8 o'clock, or no, 9 o'clock this morning, was kind of like, hey, here's how you hack some stuff. I'll be talking about that, but this is more so at a higher level. So it's, in my mind, an actual introduction, or baby's first introduction to vehicle security. So who am I? A few of you know me. My name is Christopher Craig. That is me at the San Diego Zoo, mounting a North American Siberian tiger, or at least a replica of it, with my friend with a captain hat. I've been working 5 years at Cisco Systems, and I've been working for about 8 months now, so 0.7 years or so, of a year at Oak Ridge National Labs. I'm really into multi-rotors, and as you can tell, from the center of this image is my first 30 minutes of drone ownership. Careened headfirst into a tree, and then I patiently waited for it to fall down for the rest of the afternoon. I still have it. It's Smyrna, and it's a pretty good multi-rotor if I didn't crash it. Now I'm a lot better of a pilot, and I hope to get into drone racing and hopefully some drone plus pineapple stuff a little later. So we'll see that hopefully for the next B-sides. I'm into motorcycles. So it's surprising the cars aren't listed here. Do I need to speak into the mic?
More.
Okay.
So yeah, you should probably be all right.
Oh, thank you. Thank you,
That
Jay.
sound a little better.
There we go. Oh, bringing the bass, the sultry tones. So I'm into motorcycles. As you can see, that's my Twitter, and as you can see, that's my absolutely terrible, problem-ridden Suzuki Katana. But I love that thing, and it's mine, so only I can shit on it. Oh, sorry, poop on it. Are we PC? We're PC here, right? Okay, who cares? And Woodford Reserve. It's a great whiskey and or bourbon. I'm not entirely sure which, but it's delicious. Of course, in moderation. So why talk about vehicle security? Why care? It's an attractive topic. I'll get the elephant out of the room. Ever since Chris Valasek and Charlie Miller committed their first kind of demonstration on Wired with Andy Greenberg of, hey, we can hack cars now. This isn't hackers. This is reality. That exists. People have been very interested in it, and I've had the fortunate opportunity to kind of work tangentially related to it, as you'll find later in the presentation. My work is specifically related not necessarily to EC2 hacking, even though I do have one for show and tell. That is an engine control unit. There's a lot of acronyms related to vehicles. But it's an attractive topic, and yeah. Also, it's really easy for things to get blown out of proportion. That is from This Week Tonight with John Oliver saying, scientists say smelling farts can prevent cancer, which is not true. If you actually dig into the article, they don't say that at all. And I feel, especially with vehicle security and people saying, oh my God, we can hack cars, that it's something that is as ubiquitous as getting kind of data dumps from, not necessarily like Dropbox, but as often as information disclosures actually do occur, hacking a car is not as common as you would think. And it's not as easy as you would think. In fact, a lot of things have to go right in the wrong way in order for you to successfully compromise a car and actually speak directly to the CAN bus through an external entity. As in the talk this morning, they had just so serendipitously happened to have the ECU, the engine control unit directly linked to the automotive dashboard, essentially, like the display board. They were able to get compromised on the dash, but it's kind of hard to speak to the CAN unless they kind of mess up in a particular way. And that was a happy accident for them. And Charlie Miller and Chris Valasek actually did find another happy accident in their scenario. But I'll continue to talk about that a little bit later. But yeah, it's easy for things to get kind of blown out of proportion. It's easy for people to overspeak and kind of not talk about how hard this is, but just talk about the result. But and it's not all doom and gloom. This is Nihilist RB's Twitter, which I'm a big fan of, and I have a dark, twisted sense of humor. But it's not all doom and gloom. A lot of people like to think, oh my God, they're hacking cars. Oh my God, this is so... No, if anything, it's actually a great venture that we're starting to actually explore vehicle security, because more so than any other embedded device or cluster of computers, we trust our cars probably a lot more than we should, and we put our lives in their hands, and it's good that we are pen testing this. It's good that we are trying to figure out where weaknesses or vulnerabilities in these vehicles exist. So this is not a bad thing. This is not a doom and gloom talk. I am going to bring up some kind of faulty areas of security within these specific vehicles, but it's far from, and I don't want you to kind of leave this thinking, oh my God, we can hack vehicles, this is terrible, this is what's going to happen, oh my God, it's all... No, it's not a doom and gloom thing. Security is supposed to make a system more robust, and we are trying to make cars more robust. So, oh, and be all, we are setting a precedent. So nothing more than the kind of current Apple versus the US, I think the FBI issue coming up. We are setting a legal precedent. So what this states is, it's kind of hard to see from back here, but Michigan politicians want people who hack cars to spend the rest of their lives in prison. And that is, in my opinion, absolutely ridiculous. If you kill someone with a vehicle, you have committed manslaughter. We already have laws in the books for that. If you hacked your car to do it, what are you accomplishing? It's not necessarily getting the same goal across, trying to set legal precedent in a negative way. Go ahead.
Those sorts of laws and ideas for legislation aren't necessarily new. I mean, that's pretty much how like things like Computer Fraud and Abuse Act of 1985 came in.
Yes, true. It's also how we had, what is it? There's supposed to be a backdoor chip that was supposed to be implemented in all, that was in the 1990s or so. There was supposed to be a backdoor chip implemented in all security devices, and it failed immediately because that's not how this works. That's not how cryptography works. That's not how computing systems work. So we're setting a legal precedent, and we need people to be informed on vehicle security to kind of right the knee-jerk reactions of our fellow politicians and our representatives. So this is on us. This is, as a security group, this is our responsibility as well. Go ahead.
That's where Michigan, that's where Detroit is, right?
Yes, that is where Detroit is located, yes.
That's a coincidence, right?
No, it's not a coincidence, in fact. Also, you might see some stuff from like Leesburg, Virginia. That is another place where you might see a lot of knee-jerk reactions happening quickly, and I do have evidence to kind of go along with that, so we'll continue. But what I want you to leave with from this talk is that hacking cars is scary, oh my God. like, I'm not trying to understate that in any capacity. Hacking cars is terrifying. But we can do something about it. We're not helpless. We're not a helpless community, especially a room full of hackers. Like, we are not helpless in any way. So first comes to defining it. What is vehicle security? Duh. It's in a layman's kind of stupid way. I've kind of described it as doing everything possible to keep your car performing as intended. And keeping you alive is one of those intentions. Like, not just necessarily like the vehicle performing well or even optimally, but just like not knee-jerk reaction careening into a ditch or things of that nature. And a car is kind of stupid. Well, it's smart in a lot of ways, but its intention is just to go fast in a direction, park eventually. That's pretty much it. But I like to actually, because a car is an amalgamation of several different embedded systems, it's properly an embedded systems problem. So vehicle security really should be defined as the NIST standard for computer security, which states that computer security is the measures and controls that ensure confidentiality, integrity, and CIA of information systems, assets, including hardware, software, firmware, and information being processed, stored, and communicated. Basically, that it's not messed with. And there are no surprises. That's, in a nutshell, what you would really like a vehicle to do. You would like it if you turn on the radio to a certain, you would like it if the brakes, when you press the brakes down, the brakes work. They effectively work, and there's no malformed CAN messages being sent saying, nah, don't close the brakes. You don't want that. So that's, in a nutshell, kind of what I'm kind of describing. So what's the attack surface of a vehicle? How does the information flow throughout the system? What inputs does the car receive? How does one obtain access to those inputs? So as you'll see, there's a variety of several inputs that are actually in a modern vehicle. I'm trying to keep this light, but we're getting in the nitty gritty. But there's cellular, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth. Specifically, TPMS is the tire pressure monitor sensor. So that's kind of like how, and there have actually been several attacks kind of taking advantage of that. So that's why the Car Hacker's Handbook, which is, I believe, up for auction, or up for...
Say external, do you mean external to the car?
I don't mean external to the car. I mean, these are the specific inputs that the car can potentially receive, not necessarily through steering to go in a specific direction, which of course is a type of input, but what type of potential inputs could come into the ECU or the automotive CPU, so not automotive CPU, the ACPU, which is controlling like the dashboard and all the other fancy features that we like to have in our modern vehicles. This is kind of a better example if you want to think about it. This is all the stuff that could pretty much interact with your car. We have a smartphone, remote link type app, airbag ECU, which the TP, what is it? I don't think they actually have the tire. Yeah, there is TPMS in the bottom right corner, which is surprisingly noisy. Like you can listen to that externally and it screams a lot of information about a specific vehicle. Passive keyless entry, of which I actually am a smart key owner. I was going to whip it out, but my mic's in there. But I do own a smart key, and will talk about smart keys actually in this talk. Lighting system, there's a whole bunch of things that are just chattering to and fro, back and forth. Not necessarily explicitly within the CAN bus, but also throughout the vehicle itself. So there's a lot of inputs that your car is both screaming and listening to. Yeah. So as I mentioned in my abstract, I'm going to talk about these 4 frontiers of vehicle security. So as things are changing, as things are getting kind of terrifyingly different, the landscape is definitely changing. I'm going to talk about these kind of 4 frontiers for vehicle security, where things are changing, and what currently has been presented, and kind of existing vulnerabilities and kind of things to think about. Because what I would really love is for you guys to leave with a sense of not necessarily urgency, but also like an understanding of where we are and where we can go. So yeah. Oh, by the way, that is a Nissan Frontier. That is another stupid car joke that is kind of surreptitiously embedded in this, this talk. You may find other dumb ones, but hopefully they'll be less stupid.
The picture should have had 4 frontiers.
It should have had 4 frontiers. Yeah, you're right. Boo. All right, so physical access. Those of
Tell the jokes.
I know. So those of you that know me know that I am an amateur lockpicker that is within the state of Tennessee, and I do not pick locks. I do not own a lockpick set, which is illegal, a felony in the state of Tennessee, as if I'm not affiliated to a specific locksmith school. So
you said that wrong. You're a locksmith apprentice, right?
I'm a locksmith apprentice.
Okay,
yes,
cool.
that is the be all catch-all. But physical access. So in a nutshell, this has been the historical view of security. Just people not getting into your car, not hijacking you, having a physical lock there. Maybe have that weird claw that was invented in the 1990s to stop the wheel from turning, so so carjackers don't leave, even though they've already drilled through that and drilled through your ignition to take control of your car. But physical intrusion is kind of how people have classically viewed vehicle security. And it's not wrong. It's not wrong. It's just not good. And there are 3 specific features that have been recently invented, not recently, but like past 20 years or so, that have helped in this effort, but there are significant ways around them. Laser cut keys kind of being the first. So as you can see, a key ignition, specifically the tumbler within a key, operates in the same way it would a padlock, in the sense that pins go up. If you visited the lockpicking village, you've kind of been recently aware of this. Pins go up and the thing turns. Laser cut keys actually make this a far more precise problem. And it also works in both directions, as sometimes some keys do implement. And the tolerances are much higher on a laser cut key, making picking it a timely process. And that's kind of what you want. In a weird way, the same way your passwords are never necessarily bulletproof, they're just time sensitive. It just takes a long time for someone to actually brute force a specific password. Some until the heat death of the universe, but still, it increases the amount of time it would take in order for you as a lock picker, in order to find the specific pins necessary to actually pick the lock. It's not necessarily foolproof, and it does have another mechanism within it called a transponder. The transponder is obviously a combination between transmitter, responder, and it's in this weird kind of collaboration with the key to let you know that the right key is in the ignition in order for you to turn the key and start the car. So as it says, the key is good. The ECU, which I actually have below, and I should just kind of bring it out now, which is the engine control unit, and I brought one for my job. But in a nutshell, this is it. It's the brains of your car. This runs Windows 10. Isn't that weird? Windows 10's in your car. You don't want it to, but here it is. You'll notice that it actually has, if I kind of covered specific ports, it looks awfully familiar, as many of you computer nuts will know. But it does have WLAN support and 2 SIM cards, which Charlie Miller and Chris Valasek took advantage of in their kind of infamous attack to attack a car remotely via cellular exploit. So I was kind of in the mood to pass this around. Just, it rattles, but like, don't break it. So there you go.
Sounds like it's already broken.
It is already broken, but
So the key with the transponder and the key cut, is that kind of like two-factor?
it is not quite like well, in a way. There is a physical aspect, and as I'll turn. So I'll finish the statement, and then I'll actually get back to that question. Or I'll finish the slide and get back to that question. So the ECU sends a message to the key. The car starts if the ECU has the correct response. Basically, there's an encrypted code within the transponder of the key to actually communicate to the immobilizer within the actual car. If it has a bad key, the immobilizer, which actually stops direct fuel injection into the car, so sure, your car will turn or crank, but it won't actually spin, it won't spit any gas into the ignition, and so your car won't start. Kind of like a weird abstracted way of kind of viewing it. The ignition actually has an encrypted code within it, the transponder. It views, so you might see a little black ring around your ignition. That's actually an antenna that's supposed to communicate, or that's receiving the information from the transponder to send that data to the internal ECU, which is going to take that, speak to the immobilizer. The immobilizer's like, oh, I recognize that code. Okay, totally fine. I will begin to send ignition. I will begin to start the fuel injection process, which I think after 1980, most cars are actually fuel injected now, or at least some form of it. You don't have a carburetor in your car unless it's a classic car, which is quite old.
What's the range of the transmission?
It is within a few inches. However, I will get to relay attacks, which are some ways of circumventing that.
So is your motorcycle fuel injected?
Absolutely not. It is a terrible POS, which is why, and made in 2007, but it is still carbureted. So yeah, if you're all paranoid, just buy a motorcycle and risk your life as I do. Trying to sell my bike, yeah. So, but yeah, essentially this is kind of how it works. And if everything's going well, the CPU will actually speak to the ignition and the injection parts, and then your car will start. However, if everything's not present, it shouldn't start. That being as it may, there are ways around it, specifically relay attacks and, hey, just drilling through through the ignition and actually physically turning the crank sometimes can actually bypass this. However, smart keys are a recent invention. So as recent as, and I don't actually have the dual screen that I was supposed to. My notes are not up, so let's wing it. I think it's recent as 1995. I think it was in a Mercedes-Benz. I actually have notes specifically on this, but smart keys, meaning, hey, I'm actually going to reach into here and try to dig these out.
Help
No, don't help me. Don't help me. Okay. So I specifically have, and I'm kind of covering the rest of my house keys here because this is being recorded, smart key. I'm not dumb. So a smart key, which allows you to unlock your car, unlock your trunk within a specific limited range. And actually I found out that, and even start your car, but I found that the internal LF field specifically related to the ignition is actually only supposed to have a tolerance of 10 centimeters. Meaning people with your key can't just yank your key out of the car and try to start it. You need to be physically in the car in order to actually start that. However, that can be circumvented with some pretty neat relay attacks and some clever ingenuity. But I'll get into that. But yeah, So keyless cars are a recent invention, but they're also another mechanism that's supposed to add another layer of physical security to the device. And so these are the kind of ways you can kind of circumvent that. Relay attacks, essentially meaning, hey, if I, let's say I'm trapped in an airport bathroom and someone is aware of that. I have someone hanging out in the stall next to me, and then there is a recipient next to my physical car. They know that I have some top secret documents. I'm a government shill working at ORNL, so why not? And they need access to my trunk. So they would actually have a relay within listening to my key, which is very noisy and loud because it's a smart key, screaming out and trying to send those same messages. Basically, they're relayed to the trunk, which now has the other agent kind of like next to my trunk, relaying the other device and opening the trunk. So that's a very simple relay attack. But you can also, so these keys, the specific keys are actually supposed to roll over, but you can jam a specific signal in order to actually prevent key rollover because it doesn't recognize the other side of the key, so it keeps retrying the same key, and you can use that to your advantage. You can perform forward prediction attacks, dictionary attacks, which is a form of brute force. You can drill to the crank to actually start ignition, which is another actual type of brute force. This is a surprising way cars are kind of currently being broken into. I think Memphis is actually still #1 as far as car thefts or Grand Theft Auto. And all the things, if you have a lot of intimate time with the car, you can actually pull code from the immobilizer's memory and just directly respond to the request that the immobilizer is requiring.
So when you say drill to the crank, are you saying like the immobilizer is just something mechanical that
No.
prevents you from
So the immobilizer, so some people have, so depending on the specific type of car, there are actually 2 types of immobilizers. No, there's one, sorry, let me rephrase that. There's one type of immobilizer which stops the fuel injection from happening. But there's another where it will actually kind of prevent the crank from turning. What people do often, I think in 2005 or later, there's like a little pin that stops the crank from moving to actually physically start the car. They will drill through the actual, like they'll actually bring a huge big drill and drill through the ignition to knock out that pin. And then they physically turn the crank with a screwdriver in order to get the car to crank and go. And they just throw a fake key in and pretend like everything's fine for vehicle stop points, but it is a problem. So moving on to the infamous Odb Two-Port. As you guys are well aware, this is your kind of direct link into the heart of your car, which I will kind of just, the CAN bus is kind of how you speak. It's how you speak car to your car. It controls things such as not just diagnostics, but also your brakes, steering in some ways, depending on the features enabled by your car. There's a variety of messages that you can send via CAN that can be compromised if you have direct access to this Odb Two-Port. And the ECU, which I've recently passed on. Where is that, by the way? I do need to keep track of it. Hey, thank you. Okay, cool. Just making sure.
We're booting it back there.
Oh, you're booting it? You loading up Windows 10? You're really excited about it? So, and the ECU is the embedded device that uses CAN to speak to various parts of the car, to make your brakes brake and things of that nature. So ODB2 speaks CAN, and this is the CAN protocol. I think it was alluded to in the previous talk, but I'll kind of walk through the individual parts of it. There's an arbitration field, which is basically the ID of the device trying to communicate. An IDE, or the identifier extension, which is just a kind of standard bit, the same way kind of the, I am comparing this to TCP a bit later, but just kind of a standard. There's the data length, which is the size of the data being sent, and of course the data. Now, if we compare this to TCP, you'll kind of notice that there's some things missing. I won't necessarily call TCP a robust protocol, but it works, I don't know, for the internet. And there are some things missing. For example, sequence numbers to prevent replay attacks, right? Like, you know that a sequence number specifically corresponds to a specific conversation, and compromising a sequence number is difficult. I won't say impossible, but difficult. There are offsets, there are specific flags sent. There are some improvements on it, such as the window size. None of this is really present in the CAN bus. It's an embedded device designed to speak to all of the other embedded devices within it. As such, it's typically broadcasted. There's no authentication. And it's kind of fragile to DOS attacks. There's in a paper I will lead to earlier from 2010 by the University of San Diego and the University of Washington that say that it's really vulnerable to fuzzing. Like, you don't want to scream a lot because it will break, and you'll break your car, and you can't turn your car on again. And oh my God. So some ECUs employ a challenge and response mechanism, which these researchers found, that can kind of make it difficult, but not necessarily undefeatable. So all of this is basically to say that as far as the physical access frontier, getting in your car is kind of simple. This is an infamous XKCD, kind of basically describing that your specific view of security may not actually be in line with reality's view of security. As I mentioned, there's a lot of reasons people are still bringing a drill to a Grand Theft Auto, like it works, and there are ways to get in. So this is actually interesting. Unless you implement something as complicated as the South Africa implemented Blaster, which is 2 flamethrowers on the side of your car as theft deterrent. There's a whole video correlated to this, but I kind of didn't want to bring that up. But yeah, it's surprisingly effective and also illegal in America for all the right reasons.
So it's legal there?
For a time, yes. Yeah, for a time, yes. So yeah, gosh, I mean.
Makes you not want to ride a motorcycle.
Yeah, it doesn't. So these are the common tools. Like when you think of vehicle security, specifically physical access, like bringing a transponder and a relay is not what's done. It's a set of like Slim Jims, like actually picking into the passenger side door. It's a clothes hanger, or worse, a piece of string, which is kind of a popular YouTube clip of people throwing a piece of string into the door and just lifting the lock. Or, as I'll demonstrate, or not demonstrate, because I'd love to, but show off in this YouTube video, the porcelain of a spark plug. Okay. So it's going to buzz a bit, but hopefully this will work. Ah, not bad.
Spark plug, hammer.
By a guy named Mike Stanley.
Slice, spark plug, hammer. Smash spark plug. Get ceramic. Throw it glass.
Yeah, it's pretty simple. So if you want to get into a car, it ain't hard. It's not exactly, it's kind of trivial as long as you're willing to deal with, a few consequences, like a busted windshield. Getting in the car is not a problem.
What just happened?
He took the hard ionized part of the porcelain of a spark plug, threw it at medium strength, and this is actually a specific part of it, threw it at medium strength at the tempered glass of a window. And if you remember, tempered glass is heated and cooled in such a way that it is resistant to a lot of kind of just, not attacks, I'm trying to think in pen testing way, but basically it keeps it from sharding and breaking in like a dangerous way. So it breaks in little tiny pebbles when it does. However, it only requires a very small point of impact. And because the porcelain is so hard, and I mean it's pretty fucked up, you can throw it at medium strength of glass, and as long as you can kind of prick just a little bit of the glass, the whole thing will shatter. And it breaks into little tiny pieces. And tempered glass is on the side and rear parts of the window, or parts of the typical window. So yeah, getting in your car is not a problem.
So I've seen hammers bounce off
Yes,
car windows.
but not spark plug porcelain.
So chunking the toilet will do it.
Yeah, no. He actually does a later video. I wish I could throw it up, but he actually does a later video in which he throws both a hammer, a piece of normal porcelain off a toilet, and both of them bounce off the tempered glass. But then he uses the spark plug and checked. It's because it is specifically so hard, you actually have to have a bit of a jagged point to pierce the tempered glass in such a way that it just gives. And it is illegal in California. These are called ninja rocks, by the way. These are illegal in California. I don't know why they're called ninja rocks, of all things. What a dumb name for it. But, these are illegal in California. Basically like an accessory to burglary, the same way.
What is illegal? The actual
So-
idea
so
of
to
taking off
have-
the spark plug?
No, using it within a burglary. I know that possession of guns is like suspect, but Google, I don't care. So,
Are you a lawyer?
so I'm gonna kind of change gears. So remote attacks, so basically physical attacks are kind of just like, well, we accept it. Like that's, physical attacks are, or at least getting physical access into your car, for the most part, they're trying to leave it untampered. There's a lot of mechanisms being developed, but at the same time, there are very, very brute force ways of getting into your car if need be. So how do we prevent more surreptitious attacks, those type of nation states or, you know, malicious but ill-intended people? So I'm going to get into remote attacks, and let's talk about Charlie and Chris. Let's talk about these two guys because they, hands down, have changed the vehicle landscape more than two other people ever have before by exploring the Jeep and sending Andy Greenberg of Wired into the ditch. Sorry, knocked over my. Sorry, knocked over my Red Bull, which I should be consuming, but I'm sipping on water because boy is not good. So this is Dr. Charlie Miller and Chris Valasek. The paper is listed in the URL below, and they kind of go through 90 pages of how we did it. It's an extensive paper, quite a long read, personally, but I will paraphrase a lot of it. So this is kind of the platform that they were given. Initially, they found that they were kind of in QNX, which is a Unix-like system kind of operating from the Jeep. They proved that it uses kind of weak WPA2 passwords, not necessarily completely like dumb, like somebody would speak of, you know, Jeep or something kind of deeply idiotic, but actually just that there are only so few passwords because I think of its. So it was a remote compromise of key driver functions, was essentially what they were able to accomplish. And this is unprecedented, and I think it's because of the means that they used to get there. Oh, and they put Andy Greenberg in a ditch, that is an actual video, so they really sent him careening in there. Kind of reckless, honestly, as pen testers, kind of questioning the ethical part of their whole hacking, but you know, he asked for it. He did ask them to show him something interesting. So what did they do? What they did essentially, and this is a giant paraphrasing of their 90-page paper. Please read it. It is worth it. But I'm going to paraphrase it in 5 bullets, which grossly understate the amount of work that they spent. But basically, they scanned the vehicle through the Sprint network in order to get specific IP. And they actually IPv4 of the Sprint vehicle on the Sprint network, or of the Jeep on the Sprint network. After that, they were able to tether via cell phone to the car and exploit specifically the ODB chip. So basically, think of the ODB chip within the Jeep is kind of like the display. It's kind of like the dash and the initial kind of media center for the car. They were not able to, it also had Wi-Fi, which they actually found was useful, but not nearly as kind of like wow as the cellular network, which actually did expose, I think, port 6667, which is a well-known IRC port.
It was a desktop bus, right? D-bus?
I'm not entirely sure if it was D-bus or not. I do know that they did expose port 6667, which is what they were able to use to specifically send messages to the ODB chip. But after that, so they were able to get on the ODB chip, but they weren't able to speak directly to CAN. So unlike the previous talk given earlier this morning, where the ECU and the kind of dashboard, the ODB was directly connected, they weren't. They were air-gapped in Andy Greenberg's Jeep. So they had to, and they speak over SPI or SPI, so they had to specifically within 3 months of some hardcore IDA and a lot of time, reverse engineer the SPI bus in order to actually send direct messages to CAN. So this is the hand-waving, oh, it took so long part of it, and it's non-trivial. It's a fair amount of work. But after which, they were actually able to get through the car's firmware to install an exploit via USB or via USB, but specifically the SPI port. I think that's mislabeled, pardon. But the end result was basically sending CAN messages to the vehicle via a cellular signal. And I think if you're on Sprint now, you'll realize port 6667 is blocked. You can't send it over Sprint, which is interesting. But what they were looking for initially was they started targeting cars with auto parking features. And you might think, why auto parking? That's a weird, specific thing to target. It's because your car is parking, which means it has control over acceleration, and steering. Even more so than cruise control, steering. It actually can control where your car is going. So if they can actually compromise auto-targeting, they both have acceleration and steering. But here's what not a lot of people talk about. They weren't alone. In 2010, there's a paper, Experimental Security Analysis of Modern Automobiles, written by researchers at the University of Washington and University of San Diego, that did a cyber-physical threat model of a modern automobile. And they identified and exploited a lot of issues that were exercised by Charlie Miller and Chris Valasek. I think I'm saying that right. Yeah. Hold on. I don't want to misquote.
5 years ago.
Yeah, about 5 years earlier. Charlie Miller and Chris Valasek, yeah. About 5 years earlier, and had no response from the community. No one was screaming, oh my God, these researchers had totally broken into cars. And I think it's because they were specifically accessing the Odb Two-Port in order to get a lot of these firmwares and compromises kind of into the system, and then they were able to compromise them remotely. So they were like, all right, cool, let's do it again. And in 2011, they decided to go through a variety of wireless attacks in order to compromise the machine. And the same researchers, or at least a large majority of them, and they investigated both cellular, Bluetooth, and FMRDS, which is like your CD player. And one of the coolest things, and I mean coolest, they were able to hack the car and install malevolent or malicious firmware through a CD. They hacked the car by mixtape, and that's great. It's so cool. Basically, at the time, I mean, this is 2011, so cars were actually updating some of the more impressive features of their dashboard and their CD players by CD. So they were able to actually inject a firmware update into the CD and surprisingly, broke a lot of CD players in the process. And I thought that line listed in the paper was hilarious, because you can see on top of their whole research deck is just a stack of Walkmans just dead from all of their failed exploits.
I was just going to say, my brother's he's a mechanic over at Lexus of Knoxville, and we often talk about attack surface of cars because he really knows the car, but he doesn't think about it that way. And that totally makes sense through the CD because they use DVDs to update the maps for the nav system. It's not just for playing audio.
Yeah.
That's how they actually ship updates.
So for the recording, yeah. Being able to update maps and accessories for the through the CD players is an attack surface that not a lot of people are keenly aware of and kind of take for granted, but definitely can be optimized or can be leveraged by a sophisticated attacker. Even DARPA was involved. And DARPA Daniel Kaufman, remotely demonstrated all of the attacks listed in the paper, once again, around 2010, 2011. And in it, he showed that you can have remote acceleration, you can cut the brakes, you can turn on windshield wipers, just kind of arbitrarily control the system via exploits on the CAN bus. And yeah, he too frightened a reporter. By the way, he works at Google, and Charlie Miller and Chris Valasek now work at Uber. So it goes to show there are vested interests in trying to prevent this sort of stuff. So, but what I want to kind of leave you with, especially for remote attacks, is the influence of software. And they're all kind of feature driven. ABS allows software to control brakes. Cruise control allows software to control acceleration, specifically stagnant or increasing, because you have a little button that says go faster on your cruise control. You never touch the pedal. So auto parking controls steering. And in the near future, and I do mean near, they're trying to implement apps for your car. So you can download Last.fm app, a SiriusXM app. Things of that nature are trying to be designed. I know you're grimacing. Don't grim. I know. I know. But this is the future. This is the unavoidable future we are walking into. And self-driving, I mean, is it Christmas? Seriously, are you going to completely give away all of the driving mobility to your car? And the answer unanimously from the consumer is, oh my God, yes. We want to give ourselves to these cars, and we don't want to necessarily drive them all the time, and they might make smarter decisions than we do. So if that's going to be the case, if this is our inevitable future, how can we best protect it?
Wait until cars can talk to each other.
That's
going to be even funner.
I actually have a lot to say on that. This is okay, so you kind of cheated. But here's the trivia thing. Okay, how many, so I'm going to talk about electric vehicles, and this is kind of one of the third frontier that I'm going to talk about. But how many electric vehicles, I got to keep track of time, how many electric vehicles are currently, and I'm going to do Price is Right. Price is Right, closest without going over. How many electric charging stations are present in Knoxville currently?
10,000. 47. No.
I'm gonna say one per mile they can drive, 100.
1,000.
47.
Okay, I heard 75.
76.
100.
No.
One.
I was listening. 75, right? There are 80. 80 charging stations. So I don't know what I give you. No, I'm not giving you.
There's one within a couple hundred feet from here.
I guess I'll give you a
Yeah,
sample.
no parking.
Jed, what do I give this person? I don't know. You just,
Well,
a Windows
one here. Yeah.
The weird Windows
I think
syndicator with a
that's
DB60 on
counting.
the back there.
If Calhoun has 3 of them, he's not counting those as.
So simply within Knoxville, or I will say the greater Knoxville area, because yes, I include Oak Ridge, blah, 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 and Farragut, yes, which is a different city, yeah, whatever. There are about 80 charging stations within Knoxville. So even us, we are getting into this field. Like, we thought we were kind of, or you'd think that we're small, we're not necessarily kind of involved. No, we are, we're keenly involved. There are more charging stations kind of popping up every day. I know Oak Ridge alone accounts for 10 of them, so about 9 or 10. So like, we're getting intimately involved, and electronic vehicles actually are going to kind of control a large majority of the market share. This is a Bloomberg report saying that in 2012, electric vehicles will cost the same as about their internal combustion counterparts. Basically, yes, this is Tesla. I will just go ahead and say that. That's Tesla. $35,000 is an attractive offer for a completely automated vehicle. And it's only going to get, like, not necessarily worse, but electronic vehicles are going, or specifically electric vehicles, are going to be a large majority of the market share in the near future. So it's kind of an unavoidable certainty that they will be an issue that we can't ignore. Aside from an impending oil crisis, electric vehicles will have additional diagnostics, more software influence than what I just listed before, because not only is it just monitoring that, it's also monitoring the battery. Maybe it might be smart enough to know GPS and telemetry to find nearest charging stations, because that's keenly important to an electronic vehicle or to someone that owns an electronic vehicle. And good software is not perfect software, right? Like, we know that there are bugs in this code. And so more features tends to equate to more problems. And I didn't know about this till today. One thing I didn't really think about as far as electric vehicles, ransomware. There is actually Tesla ransomware that as of today finally got the master key like revealed because they just decided, nah, we're not gonna do it. Yeah, people can ransomware your car. Like that is an inevitable future that I did not really realize until this morning. I was kind of like reading through my news feed today, and yeah, like people are doing this. As of February 2015, people were ransomwaring cars. So like that's a serious problem of someone kind of compromising your car in a very different way than we were originally anticipating. And finally, connected vehicles. So unlike everything I've kind of babbled about, this is kind of the thing I actually know the most / least about, as in I am now into the field, and you know, when you begin to understand a specific subject, you realize how little you actually know. But our cars talking to each other, and this is a personal opinion, I will completely recognize that, is an unavoidable future, but kind of one that we don't necessarily need to be reluctant to embrace. So I'm going to kind of throw up some terminology. I hate doing that because I don't like acronyms, but it's kind of important. So there's V2V, which is vehicle to vehicle, V2I, vehicle to infrastructure, which is kind of like this, basically all the vehicles in your specific system kind of talking to your very, very, very busy intersection. There's V2X, which is talking to anything, which is kind of something I'm not actually as much of a fan of as much as I am the V2V and V2I aspects. And there's the intelligent transport system, which is basically the giant network graph that you would draw between all of the individual nodes in this network. And I say, sorry, so our cars will be able to speak to one another through a Department of Transportation infrastructure or each other vehicle. And it's not like a cell phone, because a lot of people are like, well, oh my gosh, you could, you know, track me anywhere, you know, the government knows. Well, yes and kind of no. It's not like a cell phone in the sense that it's in your car by law. Like that is, it's currently reached a notice of proposed law or rulemaking, meaning it's on the books to be voted on as far as becoming a potential law. People are writing protocols for it. It's impending. The sensor is far more accurate, actually, than GPS. I did have on my notes here kind of the specific type of sensor, but it is at the very least, as accurate as modern commercial GPS systems. It has a higher sampling rate, meaning even though your phone will kind of sample between specific moments, the sampling rate for your car is much more frequent. It has active measuring time, and the V2I component's facilitated by DOT, meaning unlike Verizon, which has to get a subpoena before they release certain aspects of like your SMS or whether or not you were listening to Spotify as you entered a crash, these are kind of owned by DOT. And it's not sending out arbitrary data in that nature. It's not a cell phone. It's screaming out stuff like, I am this size, I am going this fast. Things that are kind of generic and should be adequately anonymized for your specific vehicle. And I kind of want to accurately portray the promise of V2V, because it's hands down one of the most unattractive listed so far. But the Department of Transportation believes that this can actually improve safety. It can enable more robust crash prevention, and if fully implemented in a robust system, it can prevent 80% of like stupid crashes, as in I'm looking at my phone and I don't recognize that something's happening. It turns out there's a traffic accident up ahead, but I'm agitated, so I'm veering off into the far right lane, even though I shouldn't. Things of that nature. It can also improve congestion, because everyone's keenly aware of when they should merge and shouldn't. It can send it can relay information of a potential crash kind of further up and daisy chain its way up to, or up a specific highway to kind of inform all users that there's a crash ahead. And I believe less in this, but hopefully by more efficient travel, we can also reduce the kind of harm on the environment from the specific impact per commute, because not everyone's going to be merging in and out lanes, hopefully. And by having a more efficient traffic system, we'll hopefully have a better one that can impact the environment. This is an example of kind of what I was talking about earlier. This is, it's not listed. I really need my notes. But basically, this is kind of a demonstration of an oncoming vehicle. So let's say that someone stopped ahead. There's someone stopped in the middle of the highway. Instead of everyone kind of careening around that person, potentially causing more incidences, the emergency response vehicle will kind of send a huge alert to the rest of the corresponding vehicles, which will then kind of pick up on that, and they'll kind of automatically they'll automatically inform the driver, hey, you need to get into the far left lane, you need to get out of the way, there's an incident up ahead. And just kind of a warning without having to patiently wait for NPR to get to the news section for you to be aware of a potential traffic incident is kind of important. Like, you can just be aware of that without having to check your phone mid-travel, which most of us do. It can really help congestion. So that's one of the promising aspects of it. And this is the new. This is where I believe, as researchers, as security researchers, or even as just people keenly aware of security and kind of where things are going, we can make the biggest impact. And of course, it's inevitable. So this is the official notice of proposed rulemaking to begin implementation of vehicle-to-vehicle communications technology. So it is coming. So we should be ready. That's kind of my caveat. Not caveat. So where do I, as a dude that's standing before you, kind of fit into all this? Well, I work at Oak Ridge, and Oak Ridge is actually working on this specific front. So what you'll see is this is actually research done at the lab, not specifically within my group. I will get into that. But this is us capturing multimodal sensor data. So in a nutshell, I'm going to completely butcher their research, but basically they take a variety of bits of information from a specific vehicle, and they basically make it a signature, uniquely identifying that vehicle. And the rangefinders detect vehicle information, measure distance, speed, and the alarm triggers a bunch of camera snapshots. And so what I really like to kind of correlate that into is, sure, being able to give each individual device or each individual car kind of a signature or some sort of like unique fingerprint for that specific vehicle is nice, but where it really lines up to is like Amber Alerts. What if you tie this into the V2I? And you notice that and I asked the question, and I know, was it Casey Trent was recently found, but how many other white vans were stopped? How many white Dodge vans were stopped to actually find her? Like her specific car was not the only one on the road, and if we actually had better telemetry and better metrics in order to, and what if other cars were not just participating, what if other cars were participating in the alert? They knew that the specific vehicle information from this car was requested, and they all started snitching, but essentially telling each other that, hey, these cars are around me, and they have this specific signature, and I noticed that they received that from me. We may have been able to find her a lot sooner. So this is definitely a case that kind of needs to be investigated, but definitely has potential, right? This is something
For abuse.
Yeah.
What was that movie? There was some movie where they, it might have been a Marvel movie where they tapped into the cell network like all over the world to find somebody.
That is Batman 2. That is what is it?
The Christopher Nolan.
That's definitely in the Nolan verse, but I think you're giving it way too much credit. It's much dumber than you think.
Yeah.
Like when it's actually
That's
implemented.
the same concept,
It's
right?
much dumber.
Crowdsourcing, like.
Essentially, you're crowdsourcing specific, or you're crowdsourcing, but also there's aspects of like specific entities, and these signatures are unique, but there's a lot of noise in the natural world. Go ahead. Yeah.
So how long are you keeping the signature for?
In this case, this is specifically just research to see if it's even possible to specifically. I honestly don't know because I'm not implementing it.
So let's just go on that side to the other side. Okay? So you're looking at it from an investigative standpoint. Let's look at it from the standpoint because I know of a particular case in this situation. This is why the guy gave up on the car he'd been waiting on for 3 years. If you're an attorney and you're going to interview somebody for your case and you don't want the other side to know about it, and now you've got something that's tracking your system and your car, who manages that? Who's watching the watcher? Because now you're in a situation now where that information, if you're going to retain that for a longer period of time, we already know we've got IRS agents who can't be watched. How does this go? You're now at a point where if you're in those type of secure situations and you are one of those people that does not need to be watched at that point, I mean, it makes me want to go back and finish restoring my 73 Cutlass and start driving that around town because, there's my answer at that point because I've still got the first car I ever bought. So I take that sucker and start driving it and I don't worry about it. But, there's a side to this that from the investigative. What about the side where the investigation needs to be kept quiet?
Of course, I have no idea. I also don't know the time. I think I might be running over. I don't know. I obviously do not know. I obviously have no idea. As far as my projections for, of course, this has potential abuse. I'm not going to ignore that regardless of my government shilling. However, I don't know. To be completely honest with you, I don't know.
I think what he's trying, from what I believe he's telling me is that all this stuff is strictly research, just to see how things work and how it can all be done. I don't think the judiciary is going to be doing anything with this data.
No, none of this is being exercised in any capacity at any point. Yeah, I think your fears for the future are well warranted. However, I have no idea as far as where this could be applied at this point.
I actually got a general question. Do you know why tire pressure monitoring sensors have to broadcast out their serial number all the time? So
I do not know exactly.
why are they so chatty, and why can't they just
but
be
I do
interrogated?
I do not know. I do not know necessarily exactly why they are so noisy. Because you're correct, they are noisy, and they do have documented published exploits against them. Yeah, I don't know specifically why.
It's just
that
the way
goes.
it's basically a push approach rather than a pull approach
Yes,
to
it is
the
a push
data.
approach, other than the
Yeah.
fact that you would like to know when your tire pressure is low.
Yeah.
So, and there's nothing really, there's no wire connecting you to your tire in that sort of way. So,
Because you gotta be inside the tire, right? So you can't physically
go ahead. You had a question?
run cable.
I think and this is just from my point of view. Bear in mind, I haven't exactly done the research on it, but I do believe that it does have to spew out several information just so that way it actually sends it to the right car and whatnot. You don't want to pick up tire pressure information of another car. And also, I think the tire pressure monitors, much like other technologies and protocols like DNS. They were made and they work very well. However, I don't think they were made with security in mind at the time.
So we're just kind of stuck with
Well, until we make them better, which is kind of my point.
So this
We also
is
may need
my
to
fear.
respond like immediately and
for-
not wait for a
you're
polling.
talking about vehicle to vehicle communication, vehicle to infrastructure communication. You're
Yes.
saying it's going to be anonymized. I'm thinking they're going to anonymize it, but still send the VIN number out.
No, that's not part of it.
So talk about this VPKI a little
Okay,
bit.
so the VPKI is actually a way. So one of the biggest questions in this is how can you trust a message sent from a specific vehicle? How can you even guarantee that it's going to be trustworthy? And this is actually something kind of I'm closer tied to. Jason Carter actually led this project, which was develop a protocol, or at least one of the proposed measures, in order to guarantee vehicle-to-vehicle communication, actually determine whether or not it is or is not trustworthy. Essentially, they developed an algorithm to ensure driver entities and movements remain anonymous. And kind of anonymizing this information is critical. It's okay that you know, because we are kind of in a habit of sending out our information, but anonymizing as much of this as possible is pivotal. So in a nutshell, and I'm grossly overstating his research, but essentially the vehicle itself would kind of be an intermediary CA. It would kind of produce and sign its own certificates. You cannot hold on to your phone. It can produce and sign and verify specific key pairs. Those are sent, of course, to other vehicles, which then have a bank of specific key pairs. And they're kind of trusted through group signatures as kind of the thing before. So this is kind of how specific messages sent from one to another are, or this is a proposed measure, I mean to say, how specific messages from one vehicle to another are trusted. It also adds a bit of privacy because these pseudonyms will actually change far more frequently than a standard certificate from, I guess, the web or through TLS or SSL, and are private to each individual vehicle as an intermediary CA. And the group signatures kind of preserve their privacy through cryptographic means. So people are sensitive about their travel data, but I would like to reiterate kind of that we've all kind of adopted a fair amount of, we've all adopted kind of not necessarily a relaxed approach, but we all share more information, I think, than we intend to, and especially our phone kind of being the main culprit for that. These slides are not mine. These are blatantly stolen by Jason. But it kind of brings up an interesting point in that we are sharing a lot of information kind of already. And kind of on the forefront of the fact that we're setting a precedent is that we're going to share, what is it? This is Florida's Department of Transportation. One of the spokesmen said, we're going to share information, our camera images, all our information that comes from the sensors on the roadway, and Waze is going to share its data with us. Sure? Like that's very interesting, and I'm glad that maybe the Department of Transportation of Florida is all adamant about trying to share as much of its roadway data, but I mean, to what end? And especially if we consider these locations private, we need to be more keenly aware of kind of where this is going. So I'm kind of welcoming your paranoia, but I kind of also would like to bring up that we kind of self-track ourselves. I personally own a Fitbit. I know exactly what it can or cannot relay because I have seen my own traffic and I am surprisingly lazy. I pretty much work out like one day a week, and the rest of that bar is pretty steady. But we do track ourselves through a variety of applications, not necessarily our phone screaming out, but we voluntarily partake in it to other corporate entities. So the DOT trying to get it to save your life necessarily isn't another one that's completely disinterested, because they want people to stay alive. That's a good report for them. So, you know, there is cynicism, but let's make sure it's well metered. So I put this slide in specifically to show you that this information is public. This is where you can get it. But this is the de-identified Leesburg data. It can kind of show you infrequent visitations, and this is kind of just to demonstrate if you do have adequate V2I, like vehicle to infrastructure information, and it's being pulled kind of through either frequent or infrequent visitations, you can kind of learn an awful lot about a particular, not even necessarily a particular user. This is not necessarily one specific instance, but kind of a group of them, kind of what's traveled, what's not, looking much like a SimCity graph if you're a fan of that video game, which I definitely am and had to stop for all the right reasons. But it really asks a lot of really interesting re-identification questions, which is like, what if there's a large cluster of geopoints? How do we indicate dense or slow traffic if they're all kind of moving in a herd? What about clusters of small geopoints? Can we estimate velocity? Things of that nature. So I'm kind of hammering through this because I'm thinking I'm running out of time. But yeah, you can cluster for patterns and try to see individual patterns and kind of where that lines in and where that goes. And the breadcrumbs of our data provide a rich identifying data source. So yeah, I think that's kind of reiterated.
Yeah, anonymous, but I still go home every night.
Yes. So I'm not gonna.
That's awesome.
So in a nutshell, cars are now in the IOE. Yeah, it's pretty much well known. Especially with the connected vehicle technology, that's something we really can't avoid. Security is a moving target, and interested parties want to keep you safe. Also, interested parties want to cause you harm. I'm not buttering this up in some sort of fantasy land. Like, this is the reality that we live in. Some, like the DOT and other entities, especially government entities, are kind of interested in just keeping people alive. It's kind of bad for people to just die. So it's not all super conspiracy bad stuff. However, yeah, there's also malicious entities at work. And the laws are in their infancy. Like, people are reacting more so than just being proactive about the laws currently being written on these sort of things. So keep that in mind the next time you vote or the next time you write your congressman. So neat talk. I want it. So what if you actually want to be a part of this? What if you actually want to brandish a flag and march forward? Well, I have good news for you. So there's a vehicle security center actually located up the hill at Oak Ridge National Labs that we are trying to develop. And this is the National Research Transportation Center. This is actually an image of it in there. We got a full dyno. We got a huge giant toolkit. We have Car Shark. We have a giant big old monitor that you can view, and a bunch of other stuff that's currently being developed to like assist people that are trying to do vehicle security within Knoxville. Yeah, I know the guys in, I know there was a talk earlier specifically about vehicle security, but unless you want to fly to Israel, I don't think you can exercise a lot of their tools that they have there. But we have one locally. And we're currently seeking proposals. So if you do have an interest, the pricing has not yet been solidified, but talk to, I have them up ahead. The pricing has not yet been solidified, and the VCS, but I want to kind of reiterate that the VCS is not exclusive to ORNL. Like, talk to us, let us know. And hacking a car, the kind of leaving thought I want to give you guys is hacking a car is terrifying, but we can do something. We are not as completely crippled to the impending kind of future that we have ahead of us. We can take part in it. We can be a part of it. So that's what I want to really leave with. Not necessarily that it's all doom and gloom. Oh my God, they're tracking us. But like, hey, like, let's make sure that this is done properly. Let's make sure that this is done well. Let's make sure that if people are interested, let's make sure that they have proper access to this sort of stuff. So that's what I really want to make you guys aware of. These are the guys you can contact about the lab. Jason Carter specifically asked to be photographed in the Iron Throne. He's also the guy heading the VPKI kind of infrastructure, and Stacy is heading the specific lab. And that's me. Yeah.